An absolutely horrible tragedy in Vancouver. And then the election. That's what's going to really take most of our time this morning. The election that is going across Canada to pick a new government today. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. On the phone with me, Ian Burns, our managing editor. We'll be live streaming starting at 6 p.m. Pacific time, showing you the results, and we'll be there till the wee hours of the morning, maybe, until we have a new leader for Canada. And yeah, so make sure you do your part and get out there and vote today. Good morning, Ian. How are things in the nation's capital, the big, all-important nation's capital this morning?
Well, it's an absolutely beautiful day. Couldn't have asked for better, really, to go and cast your vote. Unlike in Kelowna, I know it's going to rain in Kelowna, isn't it?
I'm wearing my maple leaf this morning here for Canada. Today's a big day for Canada. And beautiful day here in the Okanagan as well. Blue skies and traffic flowing nicely here in Canada. So no excuse not to get out there and vote. But we're gonna start things today with that horrible tragedy that happened in Vancouver. 8 murder charges laid against the man after that Vancouver festival attack.
It's just like it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to deal with it with such sort of gruesome misery and tragedy. I mean, including like one of the people was five, weren't they? One of the kids that was killed, 5 years old. I mean, there are things that happen in the world that are just they're almost like beyond the ordinary person's comprehension, I feel, and this is one of them. But what's so horrible is that this is extremely rare in Canada, obviously, although that something not too dissimilar did happen in Toronto a few years back. But the real tragedy is that this happens kind of all the time in like Germany and France and the US. Like it's just it's so deranged, isn't it? People using cars and trucks and things to just kill as many people as they can.
It's it's
It
it
just
seems
baffles the mind.
it seems to have turned into one of these copycat things that because it like there was a few in Europe and then there's that big one in the U.S. and obviously now this one here in Canada. And this person
Yeah,
well known to police and suffering from mental health issues as well.
and that, and I mean, it's so sad to say, but that isn't particularly unusual in BC and specifically in Vancouver
Yeah.
for people who are mentally ill um, to commit violence. Obviously, I mean, it's still rare in the sense that it's hardly like it's everybody that's with mental illness, but it does happen with sort of shocking frequency in Vancouver.
There was a tweet here, and we're going to put it up here. Eleanor Sturko um, put a tweet out there, and he said that the family member had contacted a psych ward hours before the festival attack because of his deteriorating mental health. And this person had 50 interactions with police related to mental health.
I mean, how again though, talking about the frequency of things occurring, that to me is just like as somebody that's been reporting on the news in BC for several years, that is just completely quotidian. That's completely ordinary, isn't it? 50 interactions with the police related to mental health, but out and free. I mean, it's just, that's like, sun comes up, sun goes down in British Columbia, isn't it? It's so ordinary for that to happen. But maybe, who knows, if anything can come out of this, anything productive, it might be that uh, the people of British Columbia realize and demand that this just can't happen anymore. The people who are psychotic or whatever it is just can't be out and unsupervised, really, can they? I mean, generally speaking, it's a danger to everybody else.
And you mentioned before we went live, you were talking about how David Eby was saying that now is not the time to politicize it, and that's typically the answer when you're feeling some of the heat from some of the policies that you've been administering for the last so while.
Yeah. Well, he actually said he kind of implied that, but he actually said like let's let the judicial process like do its business, like let's not interfere with the prosecutors and all the rest of it, which I found ironic because he opened up that press conference by declaring the verdict of a trial that is yet to take place. He declared the man guilty, even though he hasn't been tried yet. He hasn't pleaded yet. But I mean, David Eby, as a lawyer, quite obviously knows that the presumption of innocence is at the center of Canada's legal system. But he said that, and then he was asked a few questions about politics. Basically, he was asked, in effect, he was asked about, like, is it a good idea to leave these people on the street and not treat them? And then that's when he said that, like, whoa, we got to let the let the prosecutors handle this. I don't want to talk about that. But yeah, I mean, he's in power, and he's been in power for a few years, and his party has been in power for quite a number of years now, and they've supported policies based on the individual liberty and the constitutional rights of people who are addicted to drugs and have very, very serious mental health problems, and also people who have been charged and in many cases convicted of dozens and dozens of crimes, but they're still out and free because the onus has been placed on judges and the whole legal system and police and everything to get these people out, because that's deemed to be the most deemed to be the kindest and the most humane thing to do, and that's the most conducive to rehabilitation. But as everybody that's been in Canada for 5 minutes knows that lots of people disagree with that quite vocally.
Let's move on to our election coverage. There you go. The big day today. Lots of advance polls. A lot of people voted in the advance polls, and we could see a record turnout for the election as well, because there was a record turnout in the advance polls, over 7 million compared to the just over 4 million in the previous election. Blanchette gives a speech here. Let's watch his speech first here from the Bloc leader. We're just clicking around there. We're going to get it for you, though. Sooner or later. Just like the sun shines, sooner or later it happens.
And sooner or later, Quebec will separate.
Sooner or later. How's it looking? Sure.
Your statement. A central government which wants to control the jurisdictions of every provinces slowly but surely, and with major parties who use mainly immigration as a tool to have more fragile working force. Within that presently, there's a strong nation identifying itself as a nation and a proud one. If everybody in this present country was to do like us, the dynamic of politics in Ottawa would be quite different. It's been pulled together through history with the hope of making Quebecers Canadians like any other Canadians. and it failed. So maybe this country is a bit artificial.
There you go. There's some comments from the bloc leader.
Yeah, well, I mean, the extent to which it is artificial is pretty much courtesy of his province. Let's be honest.
Yep.
That's the major obstacle. That's the major block. I didn't mean that pun there, but it's quite a good pun. But that is the main problem that Canada has is Quebec. I'm sorry to say, but obviously the Quebecois would rephrase that, wouldn't they? And they'd say the main problem that Quebec has is Canada, or some people in Quebec would say that anyway. But I mean, that's the thing about Quebec, isn't it? That they're having this, and have for a very long time been having this fight among themselves about whether they want to be on their own or they want to be part of Canada. And unfortunately, because of the size of the province, we're all dragged into that, and we all have to take part in that fight. And I think quite a lot of Canadians resent that.
Yeah, we're gonna skip this next one here because we're having trouble with the streaming on X there. Let's go into the Greens admit nominees quit. This is a Holly Doan Blacklock story. So the Green Party acknowledges several candidates withdrew from today's election to avoid vote splitting that would benefit the Conservatives. So they said that they had about a small number of candidates, around just under 15 or no more than 15, decided to withdraw to help out the Liberals. Interesting strategy there.
I mean, it is weird, isn't it? But they do kind of work together a bit. And I think obviously the Greens are almost entirely inconsequential, but the NDP is the more important party, or the other party of the left. And they seem to have done something quite similar, it seems to me, like not least with the timing of the election, but also just like the debates where you saw a guy, Jagmeet Singh, who's lost about 50% of his vote, if the polls are accurate, to Mark Carney's Liberals. And yet he was there on the debate stage, and all he wanted to do was stick the knife into Pierre Poilievre. I mean, it's kind of that the sort of Greens, Liberals, and NDP are all really one party, aren't they? In all but name, and they kind of just have slightly different little issues that they like to push, but in general, they're all pretty much chums.
If they were soda pop, they'd be Cherry Coke, Coca-Cola, Coke Zero. They'd be all Coca-Cola. That'd be the end of it. There you go. Same stuff.
Yeah.
The National Post put out an opinion piece here. Polls need only be slightly wrong. Youth voter turnout is going to be could be the deciding factor here, and that's how they say the Conservatives could win this. You and I talked about that too. It really depends on how that youth vote comes out.
Yeah, or just the vote in general, really, because I mean, the turnout's pretty bad in Canadian federal elections. It's
Yeah.
about 60% or something like that in the last few. 60%. I mean, that's feeble, isn't it? That's terrible. And if you look at some of the dynamics in this election, possibly the biggest story so far of this election is that younger people seem to be inclined towards the Conservatives, whereas the older demographics seem to be inclined towards the Liberals. The older demographics, remember, always vote. And all of these elections, even when there's barely any turnout, the older populations do vote. So you can just like expect that they're going to turn up. But if in this election, as seems likely, that there's going to be a higher turnout, it's not going to be older people. I mean, you just have to kind of just through the process of deduction, it's not going to be old people because they always vote anyway. So if there's a really big turnout, let's say there's like a shockingly high turnout, like 80% or something like that, then yeah, that could just all the polls would go in the garbage at that point, wouldn't they? Because it would be completely unpredictable.
Yeah, a lot of people saying the polls are not accurate. There's a bunch of different pollsters out there calling it everything. I think it's going to be really tight. And then there's a whole bunch of thoughts on, even one of our viewers is saying that it could be a bloc/conservative minority government. who knows what's really going on? Because the bloc really did surge with Blanchette in the last little while as well. They did get a pickup. So uh, the Conservatives surged a bit at the end, and so did the bloc surge.
Yeah, the Tories they've been kind of like climbing up there, haven't they? Climbing up the drain pipe like a determined spider. But who knows if it's enough? I mean, it certainly seems. I think it's just looking at the polls. I think if this election had gone on for another month, the way things were going, the Tories would have ended up in the lead. I think that seems to be what was happening.
And I
But
think
as for the bloc, I don't really know. I mean, but Blanchette's argument was quite candid, wasn't it? He said, "Look, the Liberals are going to win. Let's. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about the Conservatives. Like you're safe now, so you can vote for me." That was kind of his argument, and you know, if that works, if the people in Quebec say, "Oh well, the Liberals are going to win. Like we don't need to panic anymore. We can vote for our guy now." If they do decide to do that, then yeah, I mean that really changes the dynamic of the election.
yeah, I think it's going to come down to the wire for sure. And I do think that the Liberals chose a short period of time because, you know, the longer that Mark Carney doesn't disclose and all the other stuff, that as it comes out, it gets tougher and tougher for Canadians to look at that and say, oh, this is a good idea.
Indeed.
There you go. Then I, and well, Renee Merrifield, yourself and I sat down and went through the platforms, and I think it's well worth your time to read the platforms, or you can watch our video and or read the platforms, and both actually, and really look at what you're getting out of each platform. We're just going to play a small clip from this, but I think it's well worth your time to read the platforms. Most people haven't read the platforms. I don't understand that. If you're going to vote, you don't even know what they're promising. Go, let's play a small clip of this. Managing it. And what we're going to do, we promise this, we're going to break down the budget. It's not that easy to do. We're going to try and make this kind of like, you know, we're going to get through, because on paper alone, though, the Liberal budget is very thick. I don't like to see that. It's a very thick one. Lots of good words, and I would liken it back to when I was in college and say, you know, like the intellectual wrote a book report here that doesn't say a lot, but there's a lot of words in there. Whereas the other one seems to be a lot more concise and a lot more bullets, a lot more readable, and that one is maybe written at a level, at a, you know, like a, I guess it's written towards the average person. It's more understandable.
Well, it definitely circulated around social media. There was those that were saying that the Liberal platform was truer because they use more words, and then there were, you know, then the Conservative platform. But ultimately, I you know, in reading through them, the words were not substantial in terms of creating the actual platform or the actual dollar figures. So I didn't find it to be necessary in terms of getting the point.
It reminds me when I was in my professional program where you had to use all the buzzwords to get the marks, right? Like when I was doing my CMA. You had to make sure you hit all the buzzwords, and they definitely hit a lot of the buzzwords. What's your thoughts on that, Ian, on on readability?
I agree with what you said, and I think the Conservative, when you read the Conservative platform, they even mention that a number of times, how important plain speaking is, and they want to introduce that into legislation. And that's kind of their philosophy. That's certainly Pierre Poilievre's philosophy. He really believes in plain speaking. The Liberals, yeah, there are a lot of buzzwords. There's the phrase deeply affordable in there in regard to housing, which I thought was just hilarious and completely meaningless. But for all that, you know, you're saying that it could be like a university essay or something. They misspelled the word center. They spelled it the American way. So I thought, you're not going to get any marks for that. That's an instant fail from me.
And that's a good catch, Ian, because I noticed that too. And then I thought, like, who actually proofread this? Because it certainly was something that I noted as well.
I'm going to guess McKinsey & Co., and they would have thought it was fine. There you go. You can go watch that full video. We'll put the link in here, but you can also just go on Now Media Group and look for our video there. It's well worth your time to watch. And then plus, it also has the link to the two platforms, and I advise you to read both platforms. Just take the time to read those. If you're going out to vote, just read those two platforms first and which one speaks to you. Which one speaks to you? Which one is of benefit to you and your family and your community? And then that's how you should be voting.
Yeah, I mean, but as we said, it's not exactly it's not a contract. They're not obliged to do what's in there, but that's supposed to be them at their most like sober and thoughtful, and they've sat down and actually written out what they really think and what they're going to prioritize. So, I mean, it is well worth it. The Liberal one, it definitely is a bit long. It's just about double the length of the Tory one. So, I mean, if
Yeah,
it's quite hard, I think, for people to get through like 60, 70 pages of Liberal press releases, which is effectively what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's still worth it. Yeah.
have yourself a couple of shots of espresso before you dive into the Liberal one. I bet you
Yeah.
if you
And
cut out
the Tory one as well is a bit dense. It's a bit dense, the Tory one. It's like it's a lot of legislation that they promise, and it's a lot of a lot of references to older legislation, and it can be a little bit tiring as well.
Yeah, but I bet you if you cut out the triple adjectives in some of the sentences in the Liberal one, you might cut down the number of pages from the 60 plus down to the 20s, right? If you actually cut it down to
Absolutely.
what you're going to get out of there, those both could be condensed down, but I would imagine the Liberal one would be condensed down to a couple of pages, whereas the Conservative one definitely has a few plans. And one of the big highlights in there for sure is in my mind, is the rocket fuel, which I believe is what Canada really needs, is the exemption for capital gains tax if it's reinvested in Canadian companies. I believe that would be the rocket fuel for Canada, because we do have a giant sucking sound going on in here in Canada right now, where capital is fleeing Canada and going to better places where it's more conducive to that capital, and we need a way to retain that capital, and that is one way to retain that capital, and I think that would really work.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that that hasn't been more central to discussions in recent years, even because that is a massive problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know if you could. I don't think we could call it capital flight quite. That seems to be something that you associate with third world countries, but it's about. I suppose it's about like capital retention, isn't it? That's the problem, and
that's
it
exactly it.
hurts.
Yeah.
It's so dangerous, or it's so difficult, let's say, for Canada because we live on top of this gigantic mega beast of the global economy, and just even the likes of their stock market, Canadians kind of just have got used to that. They find it irresistible, don't they, to put it down now in the US.
Well,
And I think it's a tricky one to solve.
just think of this. We have a BC-born company, one of Canada's best, Canfor, Canadian Forest Products. Kiboshed their investment in Houston, closed the mill in Bear Lake, and then cut shifts in Prince George because they said British Columbia lacks certainty and is not a place where they're ready to invest any more capital.
Yeah, and that's something that Renee Merrifield says a lot, doesn't she? Because obviously she is a sort of big businesswoman, I suppose, now that she's left politics behind, and she obviously hobnobs with a lot of these business people, and that certainly she's said it numerous times, hasn't she, that a lot of businesses look at BC and they think it's too much of a risk, and they don't want to spend their money here.
And then when I did speak with the forest minister and I did speak with the jobs minister here in BC, the NDP, I posed that same question to them, and they said, well, forestry is bad everywhere, and that they're just using that as an excuse. And then they, they used the example of, I think, Mississippi and Missouri or something like that. And I said, well, how come it's going great guns in Alberta? No response. No response.
But I mean, we're seeing the same thing nationally, though, aren't we? Where, I mean, the last 10 years of Liberal government have, living standards have objectively declined. GDP per capita has declined for so many quarters now. I think it's, what is it, the last 8 quarters or something like that? Or so like 2 years, basically. I think it might even be, it might be longer than that if you kind of, I think there was one anomaly where there was a little bit of growth. But if you go back further, it's just decline, decline, decline. The housing market, the health system, almost everything has got worse. Though I'm sure some things have got better. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but almost certainly they have. But I just feel like the Liberal Party's argument is that none of that was their fault, and it's all somehow it's all to do with like international conditions or something, or COVID, or Donald Trump, or whatever it is. But the reality is, like you mentioned Alberta there as a to contrast with BC in forestry. But the reality is, if you look around the world, there are lots of countries in the world where things have got better. It's not like every single country on earth has got worse, you know?
No.
There are countries that have improved. So, you know, by that sort of measure, that argument falls down, doesn't it? But I'm surprised by how often parties get away with that. Almost every incumbent party makes that claim, don't they? That it's actually it's outside of their control.
And
But, you know, obviously it isn't.
I would think that a lot of it is in our national media that makes excuses for this government steadily. And even like they had Jason Kenney on there, former Alberta premier, and he said his statement was that it's basically Mark Carney's budget was the Trudeau, or sorry, platform was the Trudeau platform, and Rosie Barton just fact checked him and said that's not true. That is definitely not true, and she was adamant on it. And then she gets fact checked later by CBC. Turns out that budget or that platform was written for Trudeau prior to Mark Carney. He might have put a couple of initials on it, but I mean it's the same policies. And since when? Anyway, we've talked about a compromised media here in Canada because they're reliant on government funding, heavily reliant. We have one government that, if it takes power, is going to cut the funding for the CBC, and the other one is going to give it more money. So which way do you think they lean? It's obvious, and 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 that is part of the problem in Canada.
Yeah. But I would say, in the case of Rosemary Barton, I mean, one of the good things about her is you just have absolutely no idea, do you, who she's going to vote for? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't.
Ah,
I wouldn't be able to bet a penny on that. I've got no idea because she's so neutral and objective, isn't she, in the ways that she reports? What a superb journalist she is.
and there's that English sarcasm once again, coming to the bubbling to the top. And I would say, yeah, it's so many times. I don't understand how she still has a job there at CBC. I don't get it. Like, when the trucker rally was going on, when she said it was Russian money, without any kind of proof at all of saying that. And then just recently, there was that thing when she was talking about misinformation, disinformation, and then she basically ladled out some misinformation and disinformation at the same time.
It was like the next breath.
Yeah.
It was. She's you know, there's a reason that she's a little bit of a meme in her own right. Is because nobody does it better. Nobody does it better in the whole of Canada. It's an art with her, I think.
Yeah, I think she watches a little bit too much Rachel Maddow and says, I can one up you.
But it's the kind of the brazen attitude. Like if you compare her, for example, to the Cochrane fella,
Yeah.
who like he actually does try. He tries his he gives it a college try to be non-partisan. He really gives it a go, and they're often on the same sort of like show together, and it's just what must he be thinking when he speaks to her? I don't know, but it's good entertainment, isn't it?
Yeah. BBC News. And then what is the world looking for in Canada's election? And here's the two people, or two governments that seem to want to have influence over our elections, both the Chinese and India.
Yeah, though I mean, I would say uh, it's kind of this should be obvious, but I'll say it anyway, that neither of those countries has had anything like the impact of the United States. Like in terms of foreign interference, I can't think in my lifetime of any election in the democratic world where there has been this much foreign interference, but from one country in another country's election. What the Americans have done in the Canadian election, you know, if there was such a thing as international law or international justice, if that was more than just a figment of some, you know, ideological lawyer's imagination, then the Americans would really have to they would have to pay for that because they have almost single-handedly flipped this election. Whatever happens, it's pretty much
Yeah.
you know, it's got their fingerprints all over it.
We'll get back to that because we do have it coming up here. We got a clip here from Mark Carney here.
I'm not hearing that, mate. I don't know if you are.
It's not playing there. No audio, Romo. Ian said he couldn't hear it.
We have three aspects of our climate plan that are relevant here. One is there is an industrial carbon price, but the question is what happens with the proceeds from that carbon price and to what extent is it reinvested in the industry? And we're literally about to see the reality of that as the electric car line comes on and the 70% reduction in carbon that comes from that through SIF investments, partnerships, Canada Infrastructure partnerships with the province of Ontario, and of course the drive of the workers and innovation here at Algoma. So that's an example. That's one example. The second example, which is something we've also committed to, Alex, which is as our businesses, as our big industry decarbonize, we don't want foreign steel coming here that's high carbon, right? From Asia, from America. So we will have a carbon border adjustment mechanism that prevents that from happening and puts them in a stronger position. So that's the second. And then the third aspect is we have this carbon market that's in place. And we have an opportunity so that the large polluters on the marginal reductions that they make, that they can pay for people's climate smart choices. It will end up being a more efficient market for them. The government will stand in the middle and make sure that people have clear incentives. And if we are elected, we will put this in place.
I don't know about you, but I'm
That sounded.
What's that?
Yeah, that sounded like one of those Miss America monologues to me.
I don't know about you, but I'm as clear as mud. Like that has got to be one of the most clear thing. And then aren't the Liberals the ones screaming about no tariffs, no tariffs, no tariffs? He literally just said he's going to put a carbon tariff on all steel coming into Canada from the U.S.
But he also said, he also said in his many words there that he's going to prioritize what he considers to be the climate over, industrial production and economic activity. So he is going to, like you said, he doesn't want steel coming in from jurisdictions that don't have a carbon price or whatever, however he phrased it. I mean, that's a priority, that's what leadership's about, isn't it? You have to prioritize certain things, you have to make decisions. And he's indicating there that his priority will be global emissions, or not even global emissions. I don't know what he means really, but the climate somehow.
This one has gone around the internet quite a bit, and somebody even pointed out here, one of our viewers pointed out, like, wow, those are nice shiny helmets and nice shiny vests. And I've worked at a mine site. I was a controller at a mine site, and I can tell you right now, all the guys' stuff doesn't look like that. You know what I mean? Because they're working. And this is a steel mill. So, I mean, a lot of people are saying that these are not workers. Even some of the workers have gone online and said that's none of the guys that work with us. So, there you go. Nice health. Nice.
I mean, I don't know if are we being superficial here? I don't know, but they certainly don't look like your average steel workers, do they?
Yeah, they all just got hired today. They all got new PPE. They got their glasses on, their helmets on. And again, weird. They're all wearing their PPE. Mark Carney and whoever this guy's standing next to him obviously are invincible because they're not wearing any PPE. So they must not be in an area where they need to wear their PPE. The personal protection equipment, right? So odd.
Maybe Carney is just so strong and tough. As you see there, Canada strong. Like pieces of metal would just bounce off his head, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. So everybody that's noticed that's awfully shiny equipment. I've worked in the sawmill and pulled boards on the green chain, and I've also worked in mines. And nobody looks that shiny unless it's their first day on the job.
Yeah, maybe they all just came out of the bath.
Yeah, all shined up. All shined. Daniel Smith and Scott Moe, the dynamic duo, putting out a tweet together here. Well, Daniel just reposted Scott's post. And this one is this. I put this on my LinkedIn a while ago, and this one here is, they better not watch that Quebec thing where, because look at the amount of money that goes to Quebec. Look at the amount of money that goes to Quebec.
It's just astonishing, isn't it? And there
It's a
seems
bit,
to be some kind of devil worship going on in Prince Edward Island there.
and it's yeah, something's happening there. And also, how does Ontario getting it? Ontario has the highest GDP in Canada, like as a whole. How are they still getting transfer payments?
I think this year's arrangement or results, they were a little bit anomalous. Usually Ontario's basically at zero, give or take. Sometimes Ontario gives a little bit. I mean, Ontario's basically like neutral in this sense. I mean, I do find Manitoba extremely interesting when you think how small Manitoba's population is, and also New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. They're tiny, tiny, tiny populations, and yet they're taking in all this money. But yeah, Quebec, obviously, just in terms of like the fattest chunk of change, it's and it's always that way. Sorry, just to talk about like looking back and looking at who is consistently where. Quebec is always the biggest recipient every single time, as far as I'm aware.
And they're so grateful in the amount of money they get.
Well, this is often the case, though. I mean, this is borne out by psychological studies, but it's also, if you read like literature and philosophy and that kind of thing, often a beggar or somebody who's supported by someone else, they're not often actually thankful. They don't often kiss the feet of the person that gives them the money. They're often resentful, and it often breeds and festers. I mean, we all know about like the kid who hates his or her dad because they're reliant on their dad for the money. Like these trust fund kids, and they have all these problems, and they go off and see their psychiatrists. You have to think. I know we're talking about on a national level and a sort of provincial level, but something of the same sort of thing I think might be occurring here, where it's that psychological phenomenon where you resent your benefactor.
There you go. Somebody just put it in one of the comments there that they're going to vote blue like all the blue helmets. Maybe that was a message.
Yeah, I've never seen blue helmets like that. Usually they're white, aren't they? So maybe that is a sign.
Well, lots of sites actually color code their helmets, like supervisors typically in white and stuff like that, and different people.
Right. Maybe these are all the lower orders then. They're the lowest ranks.
Tradesmen in certain colors, and then visitors in certain colors too. Yeah, so that you can recognize a visitor when they're on the floor for safety and that. So maybe those look like they might be all visitor helmets because they're awfully shiny, and helmets don't typically stay that shiny. There you go. The story in itself. This one here, 5 of the Greater Toronto Area's largest home builders endorsed the Conservative Party housing plan to tackle Canadian housing crisis. And we've seen so many unions and so many police associations endorsing Pierre Poilievre as well. But here's one, the housing plans, because Carney talks about how he's going to have this huge housing plan, but it's mainly modular homes. People need to really listen to that because they're talking about modular homes, which happens to be Brookfield making modular homes. So if you think that's a future, living in 300 square feet, then hey. And Brookfield making scads of money in Pottersville. There you go. There you go. We broke it down. You can go watch that video. We broke it down. The housing plans, definitely the Conservative plan favors the taxpayer. The Carney plan definitely, or the Liberal plan definitely favors the corporations. And that's pretty plain and simple. And here's the big elephant in the room, and this guy has caused lots of problems, and he definitely is helping the Liberals out in a huge way with this. Again, he's asking for people to vote for him. And a lot of people out there saying that a vote for the Liberals will be the end of Canada because there'll be some provinces that want to separate. And that may be, well, his game plan is to force some provinces to not want to be part of it anymore. And that would be play right into Donald Trump's hands. And that's out there on the internet all over the place.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not just your imagination as well. I mean, a lot of quite serious geopolitical people who are out there in the sort of strategy world. You know, people like Peter Zeihan, if anyone's ever heard of him. He's come out and said that it makes no sense for America to take the whole of Canada because Canada's demographics are actually tragic. They are a tragedy, especially in Ontario and Quebec, where you just have this mega abundance of retirees. And obviously, if the whole of Canada joined America, that would become the responsibility of the United States taxpayer. They would then have to take on all of those responsibilities, and they would have to pay for the pensions and all the rest of it. Whereas Saskatchewan and Alberta just happen to be the two provinces with the best demographics and the two provinces with the best natural resources and the two provinces that are probably the most likely to want to join America. So yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense actually. But this is the thing, like, I don't know if I can attribute that level of strategic thinking to Donald Trump. I would have believed it maybe a few months ago, but with his economic policy and his tariffs and all of that, it really genuinely doesn't seem to me that he has a plan of any kind. He really just seems to be making it up as he goes along. I don't think there's a master plan from Donald Trump. So I don't know if I can believe that he's actually just trying to get Alberta and Saskatchewan, but that would make sense. If you were a rational expansionist US president, that would make sense.
Yeah. Let's see, we got some trolls in there trying to cause some grief. And then moving on to some other news, ultra-processed food increases cancer risk, heart disease, and early death. Who would have thought? Who would have thought, hey? 13, all these foods continue to, like high sugar foods. I mean, we've been talking about this forever too. Like, shop the perimeter of the store. Stop shopping down the garbage aisles, and then you'll be a lot better off on these ultra-processed foods. I mean, the dyes in them, the seed oils, all those things are just horrible.
I was surprised when I read I didn't just read this one, I read a couple articles on this new study because it's based on, like, it's from the US, Brazil, Canada, the UK, and somewhere else I can't remember, but it's a pretty big study with lots of participants. But yeah, what I found really interesting about this is that it it's sort of like it defies logic, but there isn't actually confirmation, like actual sort of empirical evidence that processed food is bad for you, believe it or not. That it's not actually confirmed that it causes ill health. But there are, like, I think the reason for that, just to explain, the reason for that is because there are so many variables in why somebody would suffer ill health, not just your diet. There are so many different variables, like whether you exercise, how clean the air is that you breathe, and genetics, obviously. But yeah, they actually struggle to find these links. So this, believe it or not, this might look like a ridiculous, like, waste of time of a study, but this is actually important because it shows a quite clear connection between consumption of this garbage food and premature death. And it said that I think it's 124,000 people deaths that they attribute to ultra processed foods in the United States in just 1 year in 2018. So, you know, this is like a big step, I think, towards trying to figure out a proper policy for how to deal with this sort of crap food that increasingly now people rely on.
I've got an answer to that. Develop your own policy and stop eating it. I've cut back immensely on sugar about 6 or 7 years ago now, and lost about 55 pounds, and have kept it off by just eating healthier. Obviously, workout as well, but I mean, and I think a lot of people tell me I look 20 years younger than I did when I was heavily into the processed foods. I was eating a lot of high sugar drinks too. High sugar drinks is just like, holy cow, whether that's iced coffees, lattes, Coca-Cola, basically that high sugar foods, and then deep fried, all those seed oils. And I cut all that stuff out. And not that I don't drink any high sugar foods at all. I don't drink anything other than soda water now. But those things are not good for you and not good for your children. And I would say the same thing with Tony the Tiger there, Frosted Flakes and stuff like that. That's basically, you want to just pull a bowl of sugar and have some fun, because that's all you're eating. So do your own policy. Don't wait for the government to tell you not to eat this crap. Stop eating it
I
yourself.
would just in terms of like this idea of adopting a Nietzschean philosophy when it comes to choosing your diet. The only thing I would say to that is it tends to be the case that the healthier the food, even in raw ingredients, tends to translate to being more expensive. And that is, I mean, we've all had that experience where we've gone to the grocery store and looked at something as like pathetic as like, some broccoli or something like that, or some green beans, and it's just like an insane price. And then you go to the garbage aisle and you can get like several meals for the same price. It's the
But
system for pricing is brutal on your health, I think.
but there is ways around it. There is ways around it. 100%. There is ways around it. You can grow a garden tower in your home now, and we have that at home, and we have more vegetables than we can eat. Actually, like, I mean, just in the garden tower, there's different things you can do to help ease some of that pain. And then eggs are such a great nutritious thing, and they're relatively cheap, other than when the eggs soared because of the bird flu crisis there. But there is ways to do it. You're better off eating tree bark than all that stuff in the picture there.
I would say as well, just to go back to your favorite subject and one of my favorite subjects as well, what you just mentioned there with the greenhouses and that, and the towers, hydroponics and whatever,
Yeah.
that's all the more reason to go all in all the time to the maximum extent on cheap energy, because
Yeah.
it is theoretically possible that
Yeah.
if we have the cheapest energy in the world, that we could have fresh fruit for pennies. We could literally have that in this country, or fresh veg or whatever. You just have to remember one of the biggest exporters of fruit and vegetables in the world. Think about the countries in the world and how huge they are and all the climates of the world. But near the top, one of the most successful is the Netherlands, which is a very small country in a not particularly great climate. And the way that they do that is through field after field of greenhouses. It is possible. I think they're one of the sort of world's one of the they make some of the most money by value in exports of tomatoes, for example. And it's not, you wouldn't think that, would you? The Netherlands, like a small country and like in Northern Europe where it's pretty sort of cool. It's not the best climate. But they do that, and they do it through their technology. So if we were in a situation here in Canada, I mean, it's like the data centers. It's like the AI data centers that we've heard so much about, which also take a lot of energy and a lot of space. The same thing applies to greenhouses and to the production of fruit and vegetables. Like the technology is just about there. So Canada, if it wanted to, could have the cheapest fruit and vegetables in the world. So
We are the
let's
most
do it.
energy abundant, and we have a government that wants to suppress that, and that's where we need to get, where we have excess energy. Somebody asked about the towers. I'll bring a picture in tomorrow if I remember. The tomato plants on there, like cherry tomatoes, I ate a ton of them yesterday. Like, it's just massive. It's just massive. And you can grow everything from cauliflower to tomatoes to lettuce. Obviously, is that one of the easiest things to grow. But you can grow so many things on there. It's just crazy and how good it tastes. Like, we had some Costco tomatoes there, cherry tomatoes, and we had this stem off the tree there, and my son was there. And he tried both of them. And he's like, okay, no contest, right? The ones off the tower were just amazing. There is towers that you can buy on Amazon, or you can buy from different places, but you can also go, there's tons of YouTube videos on how to make your own tower by going to like a place like Michael's with buckets and that. Basically, it's a pump, and then the water is kind of going down the tower and just kind of like keeping the roots kind of like wet, and it's pretty amazing, actually, pretty amazing. You need a pump, a timer, and some lighting, and it's pretty amazing. And we keep ours in the living room. And it's actually decorative. It's like one big house plant. So you can keep on your deck in the summertime. Some people have put them in their basements, different places, because a lot of them come with their own lighting systems. They're pretty amazing when it comes to produce. And one of the things, we have a granddaughter, and they're more keen to eat it if they pick it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got two young kids. Sometimes it's tough tough to get them to eat the green stuff, right? Because that sugar stuff sure is easier to eat.
Yeah, I think it's also that yeah, there's something about veggies. Fruit, I find that really easy to give them fruit, but veggies are tricky, aren't they? I don't know if that's an acquired taste or what, but it's been my experience that kids are often funny about that.
We just, so for Misty here, we did do a bunch of videos on the towers. We had like a kind of like grow through the thing. Nikki and I can't remember the lady's name now, did a series on the towers. So you can go back and look through Now Media's videos and you can find the towers. But I'll try to keep this up because we do want to share information that's good for you too as well, so that you can learn here too. And this
But
is
there's no reason, is there? There's no reason why we can't do that en masse, like on a massive scale. I mean, just for example, places like the Northwest Territories, where it costs like $20 for a tomato and stuff like that. Like, could we not experiment there? Try and do it, try and do it on a big scale. It would be a kind of it would be great for the people there. It'd be great for health.
What it comes down to is prioritizing your time. Less Netflix, more on eating healthy, and then so we don't buy bread anymore either. It's all sourdough, and the sourdough is made out of 2 ingredients: flour and water. That's it, and the starter. That's it. There's no other ingredients. There's no sugar. No, and once you eat that bread for a while, you can't eat the other bread. The other bread is like chewing gum, and it's so full of chemicals. And why do you need 20 chemicals in something that should be 1 ingredient? It's absolutely crazy, and the taste difference is amazing. If you haven't tried this sourdough, you can go on YouTube and you can find videos on how to do it, and you can get a friend to give you some of the starter, because then it just expands and you just keep doing it. And eating healthy is the path to a better wellness, and that's what Canada should be promoting as well, is wellness. And my daughter's a nurse, and the hospitals are full of people that are way overweight and that have all kinds of heart disease and diabetes and all that stuff. And we're self-inflicting it with all these bad foods. And maybe you can make your own policy. You don't have to wait for the government to tell you what to eat and what not to eat. It's pretty much common sense. Shop the perimeter of the store. Don't go down the middle aisles at all. Avoid the middle aisles and just stop eating garbage. And it takes a while because it's so addictive, right? That sugar is so addictive, right? Once you have some, you need more, you need more, you need more. Just stop it.
It's true. The garbage is so good.
And here you
We're
go.
like bears, aren't we? We've got our heads in a trash can.
Garbage can. And I think for some of us, the trash can is stuck on our heads and we can't even see or hear. And
we just want more garbage.
And we're listening to CBC tell us a better way, right? And how you There you go. And here you go. Half of British Columbians are $200 away from being broke. 48% of British Columbians said they're $200 or less away from financial insolvency for the first 3 months of this year. That's up 2% from last year. More and more of the same stuff will not get us better results. More of this stuff from the Liberals and the NDP will not get us a better result. The only way is you need to figure out a way to break free of this.
But even, I mean, MNP, this is from them, isn't it? They've been doing this. It's just non-stop, isn't it? It's like this isn't a one-off. It's like this every single time they release something, and it's kind of you can look at it through the prism of this election and Liberals and Conservatives. That's one way to look at it. But if you pull back even a little bit further, and you just think about our current economic and political and social system, I mean, this is just one thing here. You could look at thousands of reports just like this, or much worse, but you have to conclude, don't you, surely at this point, this system does not work, and there's no reason for us to live like this. This is a choice at this point. We could live much better lives and have a much better system, and yet we still have this idea, for some reason, the idea still floats around that this is the only way to do things. This system of whatever you want to call it, I don't know, neoliberalism or whatever economic system that we live under. There are people that still just automatically think that that's the way to do it, but it doesn't work. Look at this. This is a disgrace.
30% of British Columbians are already insolvent. And again, if you've been driving the car, this is key, people. If you've been driving the car for 8, 10 years, you've been steering the car, which is the government, you've been steering the economy, and it's you've run over so many things, and this is where people are accept the responsibility. They take zero responsibility for where we're at. They take zero responsibility for where they're at, and they just want to keep doing more of the same thing. 39% of British Columbians is bracing for increased housing costs. 74% already cut back on spending. They don't have anything to cut back. 75% delaying any purchases. 79% are more cautious about debt. You know what I mean? On and on and on and on and on and on.
It's you know, there are so many other indicators as well, like health. You know,
And
like if we're talking about BC and specifically BC,
you know what?
the health of BC has been dragged down by the fentanyl crisis. But there's also other things like people that don't have doctors.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is just it's a mess. It's an
and
absolute mess.
And here's the big thing is there'll be some that'll be screaming right now saying it's good, it's good, it's good. Yeah, the ones that have government jobs and stuff like that, yeah, or the ones living off the climate agenda, yeah, sure, it's great. But why don't you take a look around at your neighbors? And why don't you just take a look and see them? And take a look at the young people that have no hope of buying a home. Why don't you just take a look for a second and think about something other than yourself? Because you have a good, cushy government job or you work for the CBC. How about that?
Mm. Well, housing is another one, and family formation, like the fertility rate. I know people don't like to talk about that, but if your system doesn't doesn't allow for the species to flourish, like in the most literal sense, if your economic and political system doesn't reproduce itself, the population just dies, as Canada's is now. I don't know if people realize how reliant we are on immigration. If there was no immigration in Canada, the population would decline just to almost nothing.
Well, just let
If the system is overseeing the population shrink, I mean, just imagine we were talking about that from 1,000 years ago. What would we say about that system? We would say it's obviously broken. It obviously doesn't work because it's not even capable of doing the most basic thing, which is reproducing itself.
Yeah, it's just if we take a look at media in Canada, we have a media that is relying on government funding, telling you how great they are and how the rest of the independent media is garbage. They've said that just a few days ago. And they live off our tax dollars. They live off our tax dollars. And I can tell you, in a democracy, there needs to be many voices in media, many voices, and not one voice that is basically under the gun or whatever, the influence of a liberal government that funds them. That's not a healthy democracy.
Yeah, I mean, we could quite literally just go on, couldn't we, about all the areas in which the alarm bells are ringing, you know? And there are so many alarms that are going off in sort of, I mean, it isn't just Canada, but we're talking about Canada here, aren't we? But let's just say in Canadian society, it's, you know, the economics, health, socially, mental health, that kind of thing, like mentally, morally, criminally, it's like,
You know,
it's appalling.
this just come to me. If we look at the media landscape in Canada, the CBC is basically Quebec. You know,
Yeah.
they take all the money and tell you that you suck at the same time. There you go. This is another Holly Doan Blacklock story. The Vax Injury Fund is over budget. So this is the fund that the Canadian government set up to compensate victims of COVID vaccines, says the Department of Health memo. The document is dated only a few days after new figures show more than $16 million was paid to family of patients medically certified to have suffered death or injury after taking the government-approved shot. A total of $75 million was earmarked for the first 5 years of the program, and $9 million in support on an ongoing basis. Right.
Mm. And the certification hearing begins today for the public workers, healthcare workers, and civil servants in BC who are they're trying to sue the BC government. That's
And
going to
then
be an interesting one.
Teresa Tam, the Chief Public Health Officer for Canada in 2020, remarks that she never believed the vaccine was 100% effective. I was told I was such a downer when I said I was just trying to be realistic about communicating the fact that it's not a magic solution. She said that in Carleton University. I don't remember her saying those kind of things, but there you go.
But she says here, we have never said the vaccine was going to be 100% effective. Yeah, I mean, you fooled me, Teresa. A lot of people, if she didn't say that, then a lot of people did.
Yeah, yeah, she's the one I think that came up with the glory holes and all that stuff. You can take a bow for that one as well.
Was she the glory hole one? I thought that was just BC. I thought it was
Was
Bonnie
it?
Henry's
Yeah,
work.
I don't know who said it. I mean, let's just attribute to all of them.
Yeah.
There you go. U.S. will seek more control over Canada's future trade dealings with China under renegotiated USMCA. Experts predict. That's a Globe and Mail story. Should be interesting.
Yeah, no surprises there. I mean, they already did have a massive amount of control over how we dealt with China. But yeah, they're gonna want more, I guess, and they're gonna want a lot of concessions. You know, a lot of people are really like Doug Ford, for example. They keep pushing it, like let's renegotiate USMCA, let's do it now. Like I really want to do that. But the reality is, obviously, it's there's a high chance that it's not going to turn out well for us because the Americans obviously want more, don't they?
I would agree with you there. The Pope, the conclave is getting ready to select a new Pope on May 7th. There you go.
And it's funny, it's a bit like American politics or something like that, where a massive proportion of the cardinals that are going to vote were ennobled, or whatever the verb is. I can't remember what it is, but they were created cardinals by Francis. So it's almost like the American Supreme Court or something like that. It's like Francis has stacked the cardinal college.
Only a couple of people get to talk to God. That's the Pope and the King. Isn't that how it used to work in English literature?
Well, I guess so. There was, there was a reformation about that, wasn't there?
Let's move on to markets. Stock market. After a couple of updates, just barely underwater right now. So there you go. Gold. Gold is definitely, after it had that big run up, is definitely pulled back a bit there as expected. Anytime you run up like that, you're going to expect pullbacks. But it is in the green territory today. It's started to build its little base there. It's up about 18 bucks right now. Right now 33.38. So a little bit up from there. So it's going to chunk along there before it makes its next leg up. Geopolitical solutions continue to support gold. Bitcoin, like we've been saying for the last little while, Bitcoin looks like it's going to want to challenge that $100,000 mark again. And there you go, kind of chunking around here in the $94,000 mark, just underneath that thing there. There you go. And then something surreal to show you here. If you get tired of politics and all that stuff, I got a little clip here to show you because there is a future for you. I'm going to play this little clip here. There you go. Get tired of Earth and get tired of the politics, you can move to the skies.
That seems to be the what Elon Musk is working on, isn't
it? Yeah. Katy Perry was just there. Katy Perry and her crew were just up there.
Katy Perry, you mean the astronaut?
The astronaut. I think there's
right. You're talking about the astronaut.
Right, astronaut. Poor Katy. Poor Katy. Poor Katy. Getting picked on. Poor Katy. Hey? In our EV section, we got a few things to talk about here. Tesla has a massive koi fish tank outside the Giga Shanghai to show you how the fish can drink the water. You know when they used to do those commercials? Not that one there. Did you have the other one? Maybe not. There's a koi fish tank anyway, and the fish is drinking. You know, they used to do the industrial plants where the guy would dip in the water and then he said, I'll drink that, and then he doesn't drink, he sets it down. But there you go. There's the koi living off of, there you go. There's the koi living off the Tesla recirculated water. Look at that.
That's nice, isn't it? They actually clean up water, don't they? Because they put them in the sewage system in Japan, and they like make the water really clear and beautiful.
So and then Pierre Poilievre, as the Conservative, said that they will end the EV mandate in Canada, which, as I think, the only way you're going to save the auto industry in Canada. We're going to play a little clip here from Pierre Poilievre.
To pay a $20,000 carny tax for the. Now, let me ask you this: if you're a farmer near Lloydminster, or Weyburn, or Estevan, can you drive around in an electric vehicle in February? No. I got an idea. I think we should invite Mark Carney to go on a road trip through the prairies in his Tesla. What do you think? He can take his Tesla. He can give the money to Tesla as he wants to. By the way, his carny tax is a subsidy for Tesla. I find the media hasn't noticed that. They're actually, and this is it's not my saying this is the government's plan. The auto dealerships are going to have to pay a tax.
There you go. And then Tesla hikes prices, Canadian prices. They're only, if you go to their website right now, they're really only pushing their used inventory or the stuff they have in stock and to order one because they're going to go up substantially, like $10,000 or so with the new.
Yeah, it's like, what was it, Model 3 for $85,000 I saw on people we were discussing. I mean, that is like, what are they doing? Is that because they're already suffering from a drop in sales? This is just going to make them lose even more, surely.
But that's the tariffs that are doing that. That's not Tesla doing it. That's the tariffs.
But I know, I understand that. But from their perspective, they're famous for this, aren't they? They're famous for fiddling around with prices to make it more competitive and sometimes like absorbing it themselves. Why are they just passing that all on? It almost seems to me like they've like given up on the Canadian market or something.
Yeah. Anyway, Riz the dog is like he's like peeing everywhere. I guess that's what his thing is. He's peeing all over the comments there. We got some memes here for you. This is our fun part of the show. Hopefully people like that find something better to do with their time. But anyway, we got some memes here to show you. Do you have the video one, Rommel? No? I'm going to play this one first.
Imagine you wanted to destroy a country, not with bombs or bullets, but from the inside out. How would you do it? You wouldn't attack its military, you would attack its foundations. You would gut its energy, make power expensive and unreliable. You would cripple its manufacturing, kill off every industry that would make it self-reliant. You would turn housing into a fantasy, where young families can't even dream of owning their own homes. You would erase cultural identity, label everything patriotic as hate. You would flood the job market, increase the demand, and then call it economic growth. You would bankrupt families with cost of living hikes, and then gaslight them to thinking they deserve it. And if you dare to call it out, they'll call you delusional, a bigot, a conspiracy theorist. But here's the thing, this isn't a thought experiment. This is happening. This is happening to Australia right now.
There you go. I bet you thought she was going to say the UK, but I guess you could tell the accent right away.
Yeah, I could tell straight away. Yeah, the Aussies, they're in a very similar.
We lose you? Did we lose Ian?
Think that they
There you go.
Yeah, you'd think the Aussies, you'd say, well, your country's enormous. You only have 25 million or whatever. Like, you've got go and build a house somewhere. It must be easy. But the reality is that everybody kind of has to live in about 5 cities in Australia, and they're all very, 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 very expensive, just like Canada. So yeah, they're not happy, the Aussies, and they've also had massive amounts of immigration, enormous levels of immigration recently to try and prop up their demographics. And I saw somebody there, this fella here, NPC, our good friend NPC. He's gone on about how he doesn't feel obliged to procreate and it's not necessary to procreate and so on. But the reality is, if you don't and it's economics that decide this, you know, it's pretty it's hard to resist. It's hard to make it look any different. But economics sort of demands that we have more people because obviously we have to pay for things like pensions and, you know, and you also just need people. You need people to pay taxes, to have hospitals. You need people to have an army, to have a workforce and all the rest of it. And if you stop having kids, you know, you're going to notice that pretty quickly. And that's part of the reason why the healthcare system in Canada struggles so much. It's just because it's to do with demographics, and we have an abundance of old people and not enough young people to support them and look after them. And that's why countries like Canada and also Australia have turned to immigration. So
And
it all kind of ties in.
And in our next meme here, I'm going to show you that this is how you can save money and at the same time be healthier with this new drink that God introduced. It's hydrating, zero sugar, and no artificial dyes. And it's something that you should drink instead of iced lattes, all the soda pops, all the soda pops. And guess what it's called? Any guesses?
God juice.
And people say I don't like the taste of it. Well, here's the thing: there is no taste.
It does feel like it tastes something sometimes, but maybe that's all in the head.
I think it's supposed to be tasteless, right? Unless it has. But drink water. Realistically, just drink water. Or if you can't take water, and I was a Coca-Cola. I used to say that if you can't drink, if you're addicted to Coca-Cola or Pepsi and all that, drink soda water, carbonated water, and put a lemon or a lime in it. There you go. Problem solved. Be healthier. Be healthier. Stop infusing your body with like massive amounts of sugar. You know how many cubes of sugar, like cubes, those little cubes that people put in their coffee? Those little cubes are about a gram each. They are a gram each. I think there's like 18 of those in a bottle of Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Just get Coke Zero like all the cool people.
Yeah, so put some chemicals in your body, some aspartame, and just fill it up, right?
Donald Trump doesn't like that, does he? That's one of his most famous tweets of all time is about Diet Coke, which I would advise people to look at. It's a funny one. But he drinks the real deal, doesn't he? And that's why he's obese.
God's selling this online right now, and you can have it for free. Comes out of a tap near you.
Just make sure it hasn't got lead in it or something like that.
Just stop drinking sugar. You know how much money you can save? You know those sugar drinks? They're $10 each in that. You know what I mean? Like you go there and you have these people that order these iced cappuccinos, latte, double thing with sugar and spice and do something nice. And like they're making an order that it's so pretentious when these people stand there for 5 minutes ordering a drink at Starbucks and it's got like 25 directions on it.
Yeah, they're usually top of the list of shame as well, aren't they, for sugar content? Almost always it's a Starbucks one.
It reminds me of that SNL skit with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. It was a cheeseburger Pepsi. No matter what you order, you got a cheeseburger or Pepsi. And it should be the same thing at Starbucks. Black coffee or do you want cream in it? That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, then we got a couple more memes here for you. For your Canadian IQ test this morning. It's just a meme.
It's a rather tendentious meme.
There you go. And then I think this was an old malt liquor one or a beer one, wasn't it?
It's like, isn't it Spanish or something?
This next one here? Yeah, there you go. I
can't remember what the actual beer is, but yeah. It's he suits that expensive attire, doesn't he?
Isn't it Ozekis or something like that, I think?
I can't remember, to be honest. I
guess what else I don't
stick to the best brands when I drink beer myself.
Guess what else I don't drink? Alcohol. High sugar content alcohol. There you go. Stop putting sugar in your body. Stop. Just stop. If you don't learn anything else today, after you vote, stop putting sugar in your body. If you need some sugar, have an orange. Have an apple. There you go.
Yeah. Have a Canadian apple.
We got one more meme. And they just seem to be out there. I couldn't find any other ones. So these ones there, look at this. So you got one with the Canadian flag and one with the United Nations, I guess, or all the other flags of the world.
Palestine, Ukraine, trans flag, and then the updated LGBT flag with the black and brown stripes, which represent racial minorities, I think.
I didn't even look at all the other flags. There you go. You can take that up, put the really big show back up there. So we're going to be on at 6 p.m. And we're going to be here Ian's going to join us as well, cut in and out. Renee are going to be here. We were here for the provincial election, right to the bitter end. So if you want something that is less biased than CBC, or you can always slip back and forth and see who does a better job. And you can tell us later too, because that'd be great. So let people know. We'll be here at 6 p.m. on Now Media here with election coverage. And then you can flip between CBC and CTV and us, and then you can tell us who did a better job, because we'd appreciate it. We don't have their budget. We don't even have a little bit of their budget, like $1.4 billion, and they're getting more money, right?
Yeah, they need to keep up the donut supply in the newsroom.
Yeah, there you go. We'll be here though, 6 p.m. We'll also be at the local candidates to get their reaction, and we should start seeing results here at 6 p.m. Well, we'll have Atlantic Canada probably by then already, but
and Kelowna, we should add.
Yeah,
the riding of Kelowna, it's just called Kelowna now. That is nationally significant, and it's been, lots of big names have come and got involved, like Chrétien and Harper and all the rest of it. So that actually, that's going to be really, really interesting. Whereas for the last couple of elections, it's been pretty deep blue, hasn't it? And there's not been much of a surprise. But it's gonna actually be tight this time.
And it's happening here in Kelowna because we're in Kelowna here. We're at the epicenter of it all. So we'll be here with the straight stuff, and maybe we can get Rosie Barton to call in and tell us some stuff.
I wonder what she charges per minute for phone-ins.
We'll just figure out how many hours she's on and then take that 1.44 billion and take off the executive. What's the executive off the top there? What do you think the executive takes off the top at CBC? Half?
Oh yeah, at least.
Half for
Rosie
the
needs her
executive.
share.
Half for the executive, and then another 30% for the talking heads on the program, and then a little bit for the tech that they have, and then the last 10% for the reporters in the field.
That's when they're not being fired, so that the bonuses can be paid out.
That's right. They had to fire. How many did they have to fire at Christmas time so that the executives could get their big fat bonuses?
It was in the hundreds, I think, wasn't it?
I thought it was 343, if my memory serves me correctly. But anyway, the big thing to do, go read those two platforms. Go read the two platforms. Go read the platform for the Conservatives. Go read the platform for the Liberals. And then talk it out. Watch the video between me, Renee, and Ian. And then make your selection based on what's good for Canada and what's good for your family and what's good for your community. And the main thing is just go out and vote. Share. This is the only time they really want to hear from you. And that's honest, right?
Yeah.
There you go. We don't get any funding from the government, so we can say what we want. So cheerio. And we'll see you tonight. We'll see you tonight at 6 p.m. with live coverage from Now Media. Cheers.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.